In the top stories, Prime Minister Drew champions universal health coverage at high-level meeting. Venezuela sends 11,000 troops to control gang-run prison. And absentees at UN General Assembly raise eyebrows. Hello and welcome to the ZIZ Midday Newscast. Today is Friday, September 22nd, 2023. I'm your presenter, Shanique Harvey. Nationally, Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, Honorable Dr. Terence Drew, in his capacity as lead head with responsibility for issues pertaining to human resource, development, health, and HIV in the CARICOM quasi-cabinet, shared with world leaders the CARICOM resolution at a high-level meeting on universal health coverage, themed Expanding Our Ambition for Health and Well-Being in a Post-COVID World. The meeting was held during the 78th session of the United Nations General Assembly and brought together distinguished leaders, policymakers, and experts in the field of health care. It was convened to address critical issues surrounding universal health coverage, especially in the wake of the global COVID-19 pandemic. Dr. Drew delivered an address on behalf of the 14 member states of the Caribbean Community, or CARICOM, emphasizing the critical importance of universal health coverage and its impact on global well-being. In his statement, the Prime Minister highlighted the urgent need for collective action to ensure access to essential health services for all, particularly in light of the challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. The high-level meeting on universal health coverage serves as a pivotal platform for shaping the future of healthcare in the CARICOM region. The National Emergency Management Agency, or NEMA, and the St. Kitts Met Services are monitoring another weather system in the Atlantic Ocean that has the possibility to cause some disturbance by mid-next week. In a weather alert post on Friday, the Met Office says that conditions are expected to be favorable for the system, and it is expected to be a cyclone as it approaches the island chain. The general populace is encouraged to continue monitoring this and other developments in the Atlantic Ocean. The St. Kitts Tourism Authority is inviting the general public to nominate their tourism stars for the upcoming 20th Anniversary Tourism Authority Gala. These tourism stars are entrepreneurs or businesses who work within the tourism sector. The categories within which persons can nominate an individual and/or business are accommodations, sustainable tourism development, culture and history, event planning and entertainment, food and beverage, destination management companies, taxi operators, attraction and tours, industry game changers or innovation, and industry partner. Persons can email their nominations to St. Kitts Tourism Authority Anniversary at stkittstourism.kn, along with a detailed description justifying their impact on the tourism industry. The deadline is October 6, 2023. In regional news, Venezuela says it has seized control of a prison from the hands of a powerful gang with an international reach in a major operation involving 11,000 members of its security forces. Al Jazeera's Charles Stratford reports.
Tocaron Prison has often been described as a hotel for a powerful criminal gang. It has a disco, a swimming pool, and even a zoo. Authorities say the notorious Tren de Aragua, which is believed to have around 5,000 members, operating in at least 8 Latin American countries, has trafficked drugs and planned extortion rackets and kidnappings from inside the jail. And the situation's so bad that 11,000 heavily armed troops from the National Guard raided the prison. Many of the inmates' wives gathered at the jail gates.
Muchos miedos porque les están violando sus derechos.
We are very afraid because their rights are being violated. There are visitors, children, and pregnant women inside.
The policemen, those guards that had passed by going there towards the prison, they told us just now that they were going to kill all of them inside.
Reports in the local media tell of soldiers stealing inmates' belongings and robbing those who gathered to show support for the men.
My husband told me the authorities were going to take the prison, so I should get my things ready. So I brought everything, including money, but the police robbed me. All I want to know is if he's alive or dead.
Weapons were confiscated and 6,000 inmates will now be transferred to other prisons. Venezuela's interior minister told local TV the operation had been a success.
They were subjected to the law, they had their rights guaranteed, we respected their rights. This has been an operation where we've guaranteed the life and tranquility of the people who live around the prison. We've managed to guarantee the safety of the prisoners, and now they're going to another prison.
Human rights groups say Venezuelan jails are 50% overcrowded on average and lack adequate facilities for inmates. They also suffer from institutionalized corruption from within the prison service. Charles Stratford, Al Jazeera.
A majority on Brazil's Supreme Court overwhelmingly voted against a cutoff date limiting indigenous land claims, a restriction sought by the powerful farm lobby to block rights to land that indigenous people did not live on in 1988. More in this Reuters report.
There were emotional scenes outside Brazil's Supreme Court on Thursday as justices ruled in favor of indigenous land rights in a historic win. 9 of its 11 justices rejected an interpretation which restricted indigenous land rights to areas that were physically occupied by native communities since 1988, when Brazil passed its constitution. The Supreme Court ruling was vital to resolve some 300 pending land recognition claims, according to indigenous leaders, who said communities would now be protected from land grabbers and invasion by illegal loggers and gold miners. Activists say it's also a victory for global efforts against climate change, as it would prevent deforestation on indigenous land.
We're emotional, we're happy, and we cry because we know that it's only with demarcated territory, with protected indigenous territory, that we'll be able to stop climate change from happening and preserve our biome. We're responsible for it.
Brazil's Amazon region and some farm states are home to 1.6 million indigenous people. The case before the Supreme Court stems from a land claim by the Xokling people in Santa Catarina state. The state government rejected their land claims, arguing the native community was not living on the disputed area in 1988, but the Xokling were evicted in the 1950s by tobacco farmers. And in rejecting the state government's cutoff date, the justices said indigenous communities not living on their lands in 1988 most likely had been expelled. With this ruling, President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has grounds to veto a bill farm interests are rushing through Congress that would invalidate indigenous land claims, also using the same 1988 cutoff date. There were fierce clashes in May between indigenous protesters and police over the legislation. The legislation is currently in the Senate, where it will be voted on next week. Brazil's Agricultural Caucus in Congress deplored Thursday's Supreme Court ruling and said they will push to get the Senate to approve the bill limiting indigenous land rights. Indigenous leaders, meanwhile, hope President Lula, who created the Ministry of Indigenous Peoples when he took office in January, won't sign the bill into law.
Internationally, the United Nations General Assembly in New York is missing a few key figures, with the United States the only one of the 5 permanent members of the Security Council in attendance. Though Russia and China's absence might be explicable, France and the UK's staying away has raised eyebrows. More in this France 24 report.
President, welcome. How are you doing? Welcome.
As he was welcomed in the corridors of the United Nations by the Secretary-General, Joe Biden might have felt somewhat alone. And he probably felt similar when welcoming world leaders to New York's Metropolitan Museum.
This is an age where we can once more make hope and history rhyme if we stick together. We're together, and only together can we bend the arc of history in a better direction.
Together, but without the other 4 members of the UN Security Council. Sanctions prevented Vladimir Putin from travelling, and Chinese President Xi Jinping rarely attends the General Assembly. He preferred to turn up at the BRICS summit in South Africa in August. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak cited a crowded agenda, while Emmanuel Macron was preparing to host visits by King Charles III and Pope Francis. Sunak and Macron said their attendance at the G20 summit in India was enough, but there are some who think their absence devalues the General Assembly.
Can we really call it a UN General Assembly when none of the leaders of major Western democracies could be bothered crossing the Atlantic to turn up? Can we really say it was a useful summit? Unfortunately, I don't think we can.
The no-shows risk undermining the UN's credibility at a time of major world issues such as climate change, the war in Ukraine, migration crises and US-China tensions. And in an increasingly multipolar world, it appears that some countries are not putting their faith in the United Nations as a vehicle for multilateralism.
The weather is next after this short break.
When hurricane season strikes, businesses need a partner who's ready to go the extra mile. One who understands the challenges and has experience to mitigate the risks. Trust C&W Business, your safety net in the eye of the storm. Our comprehensive disaster recovery strategies empower businesses to protect critical assets, keep communication channels open, and help operations recover quickly, ensuring the safety and continuity of your business. With C&W Business, a safe business is an open business.
And now for the weather. Present weather is partly cloudy skies. Temperature is 31 degrees Celsius or 88 degrees Fahrenheit. Winds are a gentle breeze of 12 miles per hour from a northeasterly direction. Seas are 1.2 to 1.5 meters or 4 to 5 feet. Weather forecast in St. Kitts and Nevis for today will be partly cloudy with a 40% or moderate chance of brief showers. Tonight will be partly cloudy with a 60% or moderate chance of brief showers. Sunset today will be at 6:07 p.m. and sunrise tomorrow will be at 6:01 a.m. We'll be right back after this.
When hurricane season strikes, businesses need a partner who's ready to go the extra mile. One who understands the challenges and has experience to mitigate the risks. Trust C&W Business, your safety net in the eye of the storm. Our comprehensive disaster recovery strategies empower businesses to protect critical assets, keep communication channels open, and help operations recover quickly, ensuring the safety and continuity of your business. With C&W Business, a safe business is an open business.
And that brings us to the end of the ZIZ Midday Newscast. Join us this evening for these stories and more in detail. Thank you for tuning in. I'm your presenter, Shanique Carvey.